What dwells in the caves may hold what you seek, such as the blissful answer to your misery.
Welcome back, Monsterites, and if you're new here, we talk everything monster. And today we're not going to be talking about caves, but rather the creatures that inhabit them. But today we're not talking about monsters, but rather the places they inhabit. Ah yes, want to see where you can get my sweet cavern tiles for your D&D and other RPG campaign? Then please stop by my Kickstarter, which is currently live right now. Watch to the end of this video to learn how you can win your own box set with just a short 2-word post under a video. Oh, and also a guest appearance by a D&D YouTuber you might know telling us about his favorite cave monster. And now, the 5 coolest cave monsters of Dungeons & Dragons. And if you're not into D&D, or at least not yet, this should be quite a ride for you as well. I will try to put my bias aside as I present this somewhat chaotic list, and to do that, I have to better define cool. For what constitutes for being cool is not just the image of the creature, but the things it is able to do, and the depths of what it is. Also, my goal is to shout out those more arcane creatures, rather than those you hear about over and over, which do also rock. Let's now tread carefully into the caves, to the solitude of complete darkness for us. And so to make this list, I chose 5 such creatures out of 94 total that I had handpicked as the coolest cave-dwelling D&D monsters, ordered by challenge rating, so weakest first, strongest last. Number 1. If you know much about me, you may know that I'm a huge fan of mushrooms. There is the Myconic Sovereign. Why do I think these Myconids, and yes, I prefer to say Myconid instead of Myconid, because they remind me of the Mycon.
We are the Mycon.
You're too young. Why do I think they're so freaking cool, other than the endless possibilities to their visual structuring and color? Just imagine the crazy eyes they could have. Well, they can also punch. Alright, that's a cheap shot. They have spores, but unlike the Myconid adult, a bigger variety of them. They can release spores that pacify an attacker, leaving it stunned for a minute or more. Or in the same vein, eject spores that poison the target, leaving them to hallucinate. How about this one? Rapport spores spread out in a 30-foot radius, giving intelligent creatures they land on the ability to telepathically communicate. Beneficial to the Myconid? Depending on how creative it is. And finally, a spore type not for the living, but the dead. 24 hours after these spores land on a corpse, around the size of a human's or smaller, the body will animate as a slave to the spore for at least 1 week. Hooah! Oh yeah, and there are also the distress spores that let Myconids up to 240 feet away know if one is wounded. Nice. Now that's a cool creature, which also in my opinion is ranked too low. At least there should be a 3rd more powerful type, and some strength in numbers bonus. Well, there is the enhanced by Zog Tamura version, Zog Tamura. She is gorgeous. Before we proceed to number 2, let me just say how great of a more mundane choice a giant centipede is. A 7-inch centipede is already a thing of nightmares, but a 5-foot one? All I can say is D&D severely underestimates this danger. At number 2, just a little bit stronger, we have the Ethereal Filter. There were a lot of beasties contending for this spot, such as the Kuatoa, a couple of ooze types, the Rust Monster, Displacer Beast. Then Yogi slipped in and almost won the spot, but while some are hitting upon D&D monster celebrity status, others just fell short in being cool enough. Cooler than the Ethereal Filter. It hops upon 1 leg, supported by its gangly, 4-jointed arms and a face that only a mother could love. And of course me. It's a pale white color with green to blue markings. Oh, and did I mention its foot is a hand? Okay, so maybe I've broken my own rule here and my bias took possession. Maybe it's not as interesting as some other choices, but you have to admit it's one of those creatures you'd love as a pet though would never be able to catch. Ethereal Filters adore collecting and stealing stuff, and what makes them so good at it is their ability to quickly jump out of the material plane and back in whenever they desire. And what aids them at being such an expert recluse is their ability to detect magic. These capabilities are probably the product of that peculiar organ above its head. On top of all this, it can bite. Fine, maybe cool isn't the best category for this unusual misfit, but if you appreciate it as I do, #filter. Cool. And what's up with this guy's drop in power level? Gibbering mouthers rock, but I'm sure many of you have at least heard of them. Trolls. I so wanted to get a troll in on this list. Maybe some more obscure type. But overall, the monster is too well known. Hope you don't hold it against me, my regenerative friends. You'll always hold a special place in my heart. Number 3, the Silh. At 4 to 5 feet tall, they actually pack quite a punch. Threat-wise, they're in the realm of wyverns, hydra, mammoths, and chimeras. To be honest, I find them to be generically cool for monster lovers, that is. Red coloring, forearms, spines all over, and digitigrade legs. But for me, it's in the details where they capture me. The more I read about the Silh, the more I treasure them. Beyond their very monstrous aesthetic, they can attack with all arms at once using a variety of weapons and have members from barbaric to clerical classes. Not only are they great with their claws, Silhs also possess a paralyzing bite with venom strong enough to subdue an opponent for hours. They are planeswalkers, and let's be frank, probably spend most of their time in the ethereal plane, which just barely earns them a spot on this list. I would imagine that when they do cross over, it would most often be into the caves, where the lack of light would not affect their perception. Probably my favorite trait of theirs is that after they daze their victim, they don't just slaughter them, they lay eggs in them. Bet you weren't expecting that. Devouring the host from within, the young surface about 90 days later. Next in a line of treachery, we pass the Chaos Beast, which is awesome, but beyond the biological chaos that it is, there isn't too much more. The inconspicuous Cloaker. Oh, and how close that one was to owning this 4th position. And the Mind Flayer, which would have certainly been the beast of the moment if it weren't as acclaimed as it already is. Therefore, I bring forth another oddity, the Destrachan, which in Spanish means unleash. Certainly not the coolest looking on the list in my opinion, and would you believe the powerhouse this thing is just by looking at it? It probably would be the most misunderstood, underestimated creature here to the average adventurer. Don't let the lack of eyes fool you. This thing is a match for a frost or fire giant, depending on the edition you're working with. But going off of 3rd, it received a respectable challenge rating of 8. It is an extremely intelligent creature that heavily depends on sound when hunting, rendering it more keen to this approach than most of those that depend on sight. For it hones, and I quote, perhaps the most sophisticated auditory organs in existence. You won't be sneaking up on this one. And no, those claws don't play much of a part in the whole destructiveness that this creature is. They're really just there for when it's toying with its prey, like a cat would nonchalantly, playfully upon a broken down bird, grasping for final breaths in its horrendous melancholy. As its main force of attack, the Destrachan evokes a powerful sonic blast which it has incredible control over. It will consciously focus on surfaces to best reflect the sound force onto an opponent. It can so accurately manipulate these harmonics that it can focus on precisely what it wants to devastate. Hence with humans, it may target the metal armor and weapons, shattering them to bits, and then after either target the flesh and destroy it with the bones within, or trigger the nervous system, leaving the victim restrained and fully exposed to its sadistic fancies. How much sheer power could a Destrachan propel with this ability? Enough to break down stone walls. It's interesting how it has evolved its ears to protect it from the extreme noise it can unleash, while also being the one that could hear a single drop of water hit the ground almost 100 feet away. Alright. Quick shout out to the Fomorian. Not the new ones, but the Ant Folk. What a great race. Also, 2 powerful creatures that relentlessly battled me to get on this list. The Dracolich and Aboleth. The Aboleth, which would have been here if it were not a fully aquatic being. It really was my first and most confident choice for this presentation. Oh, and I love the Bear, or Bahir, and Dracolisk, if you can find it in D&D. Being the biggest challenge, at number 5, I honorably present to you not the beloved purple worm, no, but a purple worm, the Neothelet. Neothelets are rare because they are the abomination outcome of unattended mind flayer tadpoles. Born of the powerful illithid blood, the worms are not bright, but do retain some super abilities. First of all, appearance. An enormous worm with a blooming flower-like mouth, fangs and lively long tendrils. It's powerful, gargantuan to be exact. It's scary, and on top of that, it's filled with a toxic breath that it uses to melt its victims in order to reveal the inner delicacy, the brain. Neothelets will devour any living creature in sight, even mind flayers, as it lacks the understanding of their biologically rooted kinship. It may just seem like a dumb, cylindrical, slimy animal, but it can bend, twist, and even break the minds of others. It can even levitate objects, and so, conveniently, prey. If rested, maybe it can even levitate itself. Imagine that. Let's hear what our guest D&D YouTuber has to offer, but first, how can you win a set of your own cave tiles to throw your Myconids, Ethereal Filters, Silhs, Destrachans, and maybe even Neothelet in? Head over to my pal Nyx, aka Idigbeer, the Necromaster himself's video where you'll find this weird mug, and hear him out. It won't take you but a minute. Subscribe to his fantastic content, and thank him for the awesome giveaway idea. Now silence everyone as I call upon the attention of another great presence here on this platform, the master of Dungeons & Dragons monsters, AJ Pickett. AJ, you've got to tell us, which is your favorite cave monster?
Hello Arthur, hello monster lovers. That's a very good question. My favourite cave monster? I would say that it would have to be the Roper. I started out my channel talking about monsters, talking about the Roper actually. It's one of my favourite monsters to craft. It's definitely one of my favourite monsters to drop on experienced players at the game. Playing Dungeons & Dragons, it's always a challenge to present those sort of iconic monsters in a way that is fresh and exciting, and the Roper is great because it's 100% of the time the players don't see it coming until it's right on them. It's presented as like these tendrils or vines or ropes on the ground or in a desert environment, and I put them in all sorts of different places, ruins, jungles, you name it. But in caves, they blend in perfectly with the environment. You can't tell what you're looking at is a monster because it's perfectly camouflaged. And these ropes or tendrils on the ground seem like an out-of-place object that draws the player's attention. So it's almost like a magic trick, a misdirection. And they concentrate so much on the ropes and these tendrils that are attacking them that they don't see the big central eye open up and the big maw like jaws on the end of the ship's the boat, as it jaws is chewing up the boat and the captain is sliding towards it with his feet pushing, and he's frantically beating of this inevitable doom. That's exactly what it's like fighting one of these things. It's drawing you inexorably into this massive chewing maw, and this eye is just gazing at its next meal. So yeah, absolutely. They've got a very good ecology. It's simple, it's straightforward. They've got a good reason for being there. They make sense as a dungeon monster. They make sense in the environment, and yeah, they're just fun monsters to run, and I really like the Piercer and the Roper.
Nice. And I love that larval stage addition to their life cycle where they're known as piercers, because even though they appear slug-like and somewhat meager, they can already fully utilize that innate ability to blend in, whether it's from above or below. Thanks AJ, and be sure to check his channel out. He's covered tons of monsters, such as one of the coolest beings of the deep Underdark, the Drow. All links below. Monsterites, let me know what your favorite cave monster is. And hey, why not throw in these guys in too? It shouldn't be that hard making D&D stats for them. I have been, and I am Monster Master Arthur, and before I see you in the next one, here is a list of 36 other D&D cave monsters that almost made this list of 5. Aboleth, Arenya, Bazitaron, Bayur, Black Pudding, Chaos Beast, Cloaker, Dark Naga, Displacer Beast, Dracolich, Dracolisk, Drider, Drow, Flumph, Fomorian, Gelatinous Cube, Gibbering Mouther, Id Ooze, Intellect Devourer, Kuotoa, Lokatha, Mind Flayer, Nothic, Nyogi, Phantom Fungus, Phasm, Piercer, Quaggoth, Rust Monster, Shoggoth, Thokwa, Troglodyte, Troll, Umber Hulk, Vegapygmy, Sorn,